I want to talk about how I review a book. So typically, I read or listen to the book, or both, because sometimes I read a little too fast and I don't pick up on it. So I will listen to it again if the book's anywhere kind of complicated, or we have a lot of characters and a lot of side plots. I'll listen to it, or I'll do both at the same time. Um, and then a lot of the time, I should say, I have one book I'm listening to and I'm reading a completely different book. I mean, that's how I've worked for years when I produce these reviews, and you get a book review, one book review a week or two book reviews a week. I got to listen to half of them and then read the other half. Or if I'm throwing comics in, it's basically the same process. But I typically don't write a script, and I'll explain why. When you review things, you want to be in the moment, and you want to speak from the heart. At least that's my opinion. You want to give your honest opinion on something. And if you're writing it, I don't know, I think I lose something when I'm just reading a script and rehearsing it. And sometimes I don't have time for that. So typically, I'll shoot 1 to 2 takes of a review, and if I had to take a second take, I take the second take, I mean, I just filmed The Sacrifice of Anton Stacy. I did that several times before I was satisfied with it. Sometimes I can make it flow, sometimes I can't. One of these was Alien River of Pain by Christopher Golden. So when I was reviewing the Shadows trilogy, which this is the last book in, I was getting burnt out on reviews. So there's a handful of reviews that I just shelved. I never uploaded them because they weren't good. As you recall, in that era, we were really getting into I was getting a lot of fatigue. This whole Star Wars new canon thing burnt me out. And I didn't want to read anything modern. Oh, in fact, I went back and read the James Bond books. I was done for a while on this. And unfortunately, there's a couple books that got hit in that crossfire that didn't deserve it necessarily. And one of those is River of Pain. And I want to say something here. My opinions still stand on pretty much everything that was uploaded at the time in the last couple years. I think that Stealth and Siege, the Clone Wars Gambit duology, are horrendous. I think Wild Space is awful too. All those Karen Miller Star Wars books, I still don't like them. And I think that Sea of Sorrows, the second one of these books from the Shadows trilogy, is horrendous. But when I read River of Pain, my initial thoughts are, this isn't great. This is bad, but it's not as bad as Sea of Sorrows. So I paged through this again not too long ago because, I didn't give it a chance. And, deep down, this and another Alien book, I was conflicted about them. And anyway, Alien River of Pain is the third book in the Shadows trilogy. And what I mean by it's the third book, it's because Titan Books says it is, but it really doesn't have anything to do with the planet that Out of the Shadows and Sea of Sorrows were involved with. In fact, this happens before and during the beginning of Aliens. It's about Hadley's Hope. We have colonial marines on Hadley's Hope because, Weyland Yutani knows the ship's there, although they're not telling the colonists, of course. Specifically, our main character is Captain Brackett. He's assigned there, and he discovers that, hey, his ex is there, and his ex is no other than Anne, Newt's mom. You're understanding why I didn't like this. Anyway, Brackett's not a bad character. In fact, he's a pretty good character, and most of the characters are fine in this story. Brackett has these issues with some of his Marines in his command are just a-holes, and insubordinate. And they don't get along. There's an incident where one of the colonists holds some other colonists hostage in the big fusion reactor thing that's like going like nuclear in the Aliens movie. And we find out kind of why that's having issues. And we get a lot of stuff from James Cameron's special edition cut that came out in the early 90s of Aliens, like Newt's family on the crawler. We redo that when her dad gets the face hugger on him. We get a lot of the Ripley stuff from like the beginning of Aliens. Not all of it, honestly. I don't remember a lot of it being from the special edition. It's more the theatrical cut, and it's word for word the same. So I don't get why the Ripley stuff is even in there. It's not a lot of it, but it's just bad. Because we've been there, we've done that. I mean, we had the Aliens novelization. Like, what's the point of putting Ripley in there except for to make this a trilogy? This trilogy that's like, hey, we're really connected to the Alien movies and Alien Isolation, the game. Except for the only one that really references Alien Isolation is Out of the Shadows. And Sea of Sorrows, I think, has one or two throwaway lines to Isolation, which at the time was a big deal. I mean, it even got its own novelization later, which we will get to soon. But River of Pain has something going for it. And Christopher Golden brings in Newt's Tale, which was a 2-issue Dark Horse miniseries about the events of Aliens from Newt's perspective. And the big thing that it adds, well, it added a bunch of the special edition stuff from Aliens that wasn't in the theatrical cut, and people hadn't seen it yet. But it also chronicles the last stand at Hadley's Hope. And before I forget, the reason it's called River of Pain is the planet's called Archeron, which is like Greek for River of Pain. Like it's like going into like Hades or whatever. I'm not big on like the whole Greek mythos really, so I couldn't tell you if that's accurate or not. But that's pretty much why it's called it's like a nickname for the planet, is like River of Pain, because it's the barren wasteland basically that they terraformed. And it's one of these stories where it's not necessary. We don't need to know what happened to the colonists. And having Brackett and Anne have like a former relationship is not necessary. Like, it feels like a soap opera, and that's not a good thing. And that's where River of Pain really sinks. But with that being said, it's probably the best of the Shadows trilogy. Not great. It's shoehorned, but it's less shoehorned than the previous two. They should just call this the Alien Shoehorn trilogy, because we shoehorn Ripley into everything for no reason. I mean, Out of the Shadows makes no goddamn sense. And Sea of Sorrows is just a sorrowful read. And then we get to this, and it's like, well, we needed a trilogy, but we have no ideas for a third one. Christopher Golden wanted to write about Hadley's Hope. So we write about Hadley's Hope. It's a meh book. It's a meh. And paging through it again, I'm just reminded of that. I don't know. I don't know about this. Would I recommend it? Not really. If you really want to know what happened to Hadley's Hope, you can check this out. Although there's no reference to Alien Fire and Stone in this, which I get that happened later, so Fire and Stone doesn't make sense now, because they come from LV-426, but Yeah. Anyway. Next time, we're going to go back to Encyclopocalypse with Killer Flies. Have a good one.